Am I hot? Good. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. So we're the last panel before they can actually go out and have probably a nice beer or something after this. So we're going to keep them over a little longer just because that's who we are and what we do. But I wanted to start off. My name is Dylan Ray. I'm the Network Cross-Functional Team Director, and I got a panel of team members here. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. But I wanted to open it up and kind of set the stage to the discussion we're going to have today on the electromagnetic spectrum. I took a lot of interest in this particular event about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years now. So let's imagine that the year's just 2025. Biggest concern I have is imagine that you're trying to drive and go somewhere and stoplights stop working. You go to the gas station. All the pumps are down. You know, our leaders are being tracked all over the world because we all have our cell phones in our hand. We're out on the battlefield operations, and there's more cell phones just giving away our positions, unable to hide in plain sight. That's a concern that all of our leaders currently have today. And we want to just stop by and have a discussion on how you can help us across our forces, not only the Army. This is a bigger problem than just the Army problem. Hiding in plain sight and the spectrum, understanding it. We took 20 years off during the last war and not really focused on the spectrum. And now we are because our enemies have advanced in their capabilities to find us on the battle space. And the help that we need from you is just that. How do we allow commanders to see themselves, one? Two, how do we increase the training so our soldiers, our leaders can understand what it looks like to be in the spectrum? And then is there capabilities out there that can reduce the power on the systems that we're using, smart power that can reduce the output so that we are hiding in plain sight? That's the discussion we want to stop by right now and just have with you, and just, well, we'll take questions at the end, but we brought a commander along who's going to tell you specifically, you know, his concerns from his operational view of the battlefield. So I'll pass the mic over. Thanks.
Sir, thank you. Colonel Tom Goettke, I'm the 10th Mountain Divardi Commander, and just going to share perhaps a couple observations from my approach as a unit commander. I see it two different ways, and I'd like to pull the string on this a bit. So first, I'm dual-hatted. My first job is the Division Fire Support Coordinator. Okay, and in that function, I lead the targeting process for the division. Secondly, I'm a functional brigade commander that owns a number of the critical assets to employ in a LISCO environment for the division. So the first approach, or the first way I look at this, is that the EMS is the first form of contact, always. Okay, we sense to make sense. So we look at the electromagnetic environment, and it identifies something is there. We don't know quite what it is, but we take that sensory information and then we couple it with our intel team to make sense of it. And if we do that correctly, and it meets the attack guidance standards that we've set and the target selection standards that we've set, then it ultimately sets us up for a strike. So that's the first kind of vantage point that I'm looking at this problem set. The second is that the EMS crosses all domains. Okay, so when I look at it, I look across the Army as a service and the Joint Force, and I pull all of those capabilities together, and I say, really what that is that's the assets available that I have to strike a target. Okay, and then lastly, just putting my functional brigade commander hat on, I look at it from a critical vulnerability standpoint. I own Q-53 radar, the Sentinel radar. I am the force field artillery headquarters for the division. I am the division's alternative command post. And so all of those concerns, the exposure, how do I mitigate that exposure and survive on the contemporary battlefield? With those concerns, the team kind of came together and thought, how do we rehearse this, coming at it from, juxtaposing these two positions. We said, well, hey, why don't we develop a training series? Our training series is called Hunter EMS. And essentially what it does, the electronic surveillance hunters against a critical asset, or what we do, organic radars, they go hide. We essentially say, radars, you go hide, sensors, you go hunt them. And it's a scrimmage, essentially, a cat and mouse game where we frequently go back and forth and can iterate frequently and kind of sharpen our own skills from an individual and unit standpoint. From the hunter side, we have PR200s, spectrum analyzers, a number of other assets. Started out kind of from a terrestrial based system and then integrated the third dimension in a number of ways. But really what they've learned is the value of teaming. If you send 3 teams out there, they've got to learn how to identify a line of bearing, how to identify a side lobe, conduct a resection, a triangulation, to reduce that target location error to a threshold where we can actually strike a target. So how they team together and then how they communicate with each other is critically important. On the other side, the critical assets, the radars, are also in a teaming function. It's not just the radars that I own. You couple all of the radars in the 10th Mountain Division into a target array. Where they're up, then they're down. They're up, they're down. They're covering the same area, but they're mitigating their exposure. They have very disciplined emission control. The second, the number of, you have a number of other pieces with that. The terrain masking, but probably the biggest piece from a critical vulnerability standpoint is getting the soldiers, these young NCOs, to understand that you're always being hunted. As soon as your system turns on, you can be identified in the electromagnetic spectrum, okay? That's a bit of a hump to get over, that as soon as you're up and operational, somebody's trying to hunt you and kill you, okay? Your goal is to stay outside of a targetable threshold so that they might see you, they might know what's out there, but stay out at a distance, out of a target location error where they're not going to choose. You're not going to meet their target selection standards or their attack guidance, and so they choose not to strike you. That's a bit of a hurdle to overcome, but their mission has ultimately become hard to kill. And so Hunter EMS continues to iterate on this cat and mouse game, throwing complexity at each iteration, but we've been incredibly, I would assess we've achieved success because one, it's hard to do, and two, there's not many ways to go about it. It requires a lot of creativity to kind of actually practice operations in the electromagnetic spectrum. So that's just the 10th Mountain story, and we can discuss further if anybody's got any questions. Sir?
Awesome. Thanks. I'm Brigadier General Ed Barker. I'm the Program Executive Officer for Intelligence and Electronic Warfare and Sensors, so Aberdeen Proving Ground. So thanks for the opportunity to be here today. Thanks for the opportunity with the team, sir. Appreciate it. I just want to give a quick shout out to our, some love to our friends in Baltimore, given everything that happened this morning. I tell you, as part of the Aberdeen family, we're very close to that area, and it's not uncommon for our employees to commute in that space. So thoughts and prayers for them. So the Army's really focusing on reducing the static command post, the signature, and ensuring that our commanders have the freedom of maneuver and the need to do C2 at the time and place that they want, right? And so for my foxhole as the PEO delivering a lot of the capabilities, I mean, that's what I'm trying to do, is make sure that that the commanders have the tools to do just that. So efforts like our electronic warfare planning and management tool, our situational awareness system, our spectrum situational awareness system, and also our modular EMS system. Those are some of the tools that we're using to get at that. From an EWPMT, we want that commander to have the means to be able to manage all the EW assets in his space, to remotely control them if needed, and to really inform the decisions that he's making, he or she is making, across the EMS. From an S2AS standpoint, that is, what we're really learning right now is that is a critical need. You need to be able to understand not only what you look like within the EMS, but where are you being influenced? What does the blue signature look like? What does your signature look like? Where are the conflicts? And making sure that you understand and you have that situational awareness so you can manage and mitigate the risk is what it really boils down to from a capability standpoint. And then on the modular EMS system, think of that in terms of it's really about obfuscation and hiding in the open, hiding in the noise, and confusing the enemy. And that's what we want to be able to give them the tools to do. So as they manage that across their portfolio. And then the reality is from a risk standpoint, opportunities like the Hunter EMS, I mean, we got to continue to leverage those. If you guys have not experienced or seen what they're doing or had the opportunity to go up to Fort Drum, I would offer you to take the opportunity to do it. There's a lot of investments. We look at it as a great opportunity to partner and get soldier feedback across our EW portfolio. And what you see up there is it really validates that that need. It really validates the need for the commander to be able to have the tools, to confuse the enemy to the point where the enemy, he may see something there in the spectrum, but they just can't pinpoint it. And something as simple as that, and giving them a lack of understanding so that they know exactly what is there. That's the critical part. Something as little as that. And we're going to continue to have lessons learned coming out of the different AORs. All of that is going to continue to inform the requirements. It's going to continue to inform our investment strategies. And the reality is that EMS is it's a smaller part of the ecosystem from an EW standpoint that we just have got to continue to do better in and to refine. It feeds into the larger narrative from an Army standpoint that we, given the focus on coin for so many decades, a lot of these capabilities, a lot of the expertise is atrophied, and so we're working to rebuild that, and we're going to continue to do it. And so we look, like I said, we look for great partnerships with folks like the 10th Mountain. We're going to continue to do that, and we're going to continue to make sure that our commanders have the best tools that they can when it comes to manage themselves within the EMS. And I'm going to turn it over to my good friends, Mark Kitz. It's always great. It's always nice having the guy that was been in your organization for 14 years prior to you, and then he was your boss for 2 years. It just makes these speaking engagements so easy because I've got like the ultimate phone a friend. Okay? Or at a minimum, I know he's going to correct me. No, the answer's in the right-hand drawer of your desk.
I thought you were just going to blame me. I thought that was Mark Kitz, I'm the PEO for C3T. I'm the network PEO. And I just wanted to build on a couple of things Tom and Ed said. One of the things that we learned when we observed what was happening in the Ukraine, we learned that operations in spectrum changed over time, right? Significantly. Where today, the fight looks very different in spectrum than it did 2 or 3 months after the conflict started. And so Tom talked a lot about how are we dispersing our command posts? How are we setting up and building discipline in our formation in how we emit or how we present dilemmas to the enemy? And so there's 2 things I want to talk about very quickly. One is, how are we enabling commanders with a modular command post? How are we enabling commanders to not build static command posts, but give them options in how they get after building their command post or setting up their command post? Because this idea that 10th Mountain is going to encounter the same fight that 25th ID is going to encounter would be a fallacy if we built the same command post infrastructure for those 2 divisions, because they're going to fight in very different ways. And the second thing I want to talk about, what General Ray talked about, was how do we hide in plain sight? And we talk about that being a technology problem. We talked about that being how we leverage technology, and so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So first, I wanted to talk about our command posts, right? How today we deliver command posts to our Army is very much how we deliver radios, right? Here's your command post. And we're working to change that concept. And so in 10-11, we engaged with industry on a few RFIs, In 10-12, we're going to be showing some prototypes and getting after building some capabilities. So what I'd like to be able to do is give the division commanders, give brigade commanders options in how they employ their command post. Now, what does that mean in reality? That means each of these divisions are fighting on different combat platforms. ISVs for the lights, JLTVs for the heavies, even AMPs for the heavies. Strikers in their striker formations. Some formations are fighting strikers even when they're not a striker formation. So how do we give those commanders a modular way to employ their network, employ their C2 capabilities, so that they can shoot, move, and communicate in a way that allows them to fight in the way that they want to fight, not the way that the equipment dictates that they fight. And so really, I'm challenging industry. How do you build an agnostic to platform power capability so we can do SATCOM on the move? That I can do robust ITN or lower tactical radio formations so that I can get to much smaller campus. And so Tom did a fantastic job of outlaying sort of the operational dilemma, but we on the material side have to give him options so he can employ his radar battery, he can employ his main CP in a much more modular way so that he can move much faster, or he can set up static for his full ops if he needs to. Giving that commander options, I think, is the key to the future of our command post. And that, I think, is a huge challenge to industry, and I'm looking forward to hearing the options that you can provide. The second is this concept of hiding in plain sight, right? If we could provide commanders the opportunity where they can see themselves and the spectrum around them, and then give them opportunities to communicate in ways that look the exact same way that the rest of the environment is, I think is the panacea of where each of the core commanders want to get to. And so Ed talked about how we give the commander the ability to see themselves. Now I think our job on the network side is giving them options to communicate the same way that the rest of the environment is communicating. Whether that's 5G, 4G, even 3G in some parts of the world, whether that's Wi-Fi, how do I deliver a commercially based solution that provides those dilemmas to the targeting opportunity, right? And so I think industry has a lot of opportunities to provide us those commercial ways to communicate in that hiding in plain sight. And I'm looking forward to working with industry on that. And with that, I'll conclude my remarks, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
Yeah, and I'll add one thing. And you said disperse, and you do want the commanders to be also digitally connected while they're moving. That's a big point. I'm sure that's exactly what you're looking for. So we look forward to your questions. Yeah, pass that back. There you go, right there.
Thank you, sir. Hi, Scott Porter from Talis. Thank you for calling out our Maryland neighbors, because I just drove over that bridge this weekend.
Oh, boy.
Let's see. Mark, I know you're an EW cool kid.
the mic. You weren't supposed to ask me.
All right, I know this isn't an EW question. When Secretary Camarena was giving the opening remarks yesterday, one of the very first things touched on was radios, TACCOMs as a service. How do y'all feel, where do you think you are on that path forward to maybe do that?
Yeah, so we're running a radio as a service pilot right now, right, which is out on the street and very close to award, I think, if I remember correctly. Really, we want to engage with industry on where is our return on investment if we go to an as a service model. I think, one of the things as being new to the network that was surprising to me is you go to a lot of units and they have a lot of radios at the ready, right? Not necessarily being used. Even when units go to JRTC, they're using less than 50% of the radios that we equip the unit. So nobody wants to be in the business of giving radios to units that are not going to necessarily leverage all those radios. And so what we really want to get, what the Army wants to get to is an on-demand model, right? We want units to use the radios that they're being given, and then when they need capacity, we have an on-demand model to do that. Now, there's a lot that goes into the relationship with industry in this as-a-service model. And I really see what the Under talked about today, or what we're going after with this pilot program, is a dialogue with industry. Where are the breakpoints? How can we make sure we give these commanders the radios they need to deploy now, and the radios that they could need when they need capacity to increase? And so I think there's really a dialogue, Scott. I'm looking forward to that dialogue with industry. He also mentioned SATCOM as a service, so I'm going to use this as an opportunity. I think that's a much more mature option, right? I think the industry is much more mature. There's a much more robust commercial demand. And so I think we're going to much more aggressively pursue SATCOM now and engage with the dialogue with industry on radio as a service. And so hopefully that gets after your questions. Thank you.
Sure, Travis Lewis with Next Gen Pro. I had a question about the EWPMT and the EMBM and the relationship of the joint community and the EW flight. What's kind of the future as you see as a strategic requirement, synchronizing the joint flight with the Army systems in the EW domain?
Yeah, so EWPMT, obviously Army requirement, and I think it feeds into the larger JADC2 conversation when it comes to that. There's a lot of opportunities within the space right now to get after those. I think one of the things you're seeing, and it's really across the portfolio, is some of the foundational elements that we're doing. Titan as an example, one of those good placeholders from that standpoint. And then the some of the work that we're doing from a commonality aspect when it comes to, again, I'll go into the integrated sensor architecture and understanding that type of commonality, CMFF, CMOS, and all those different open standards. That's what's really laying the foundation for that common JADC2 conversation, and I think that's what feeds into the larger joint requirements.
Okay, so you're still going to kind of keep the Army requirement?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right,
yeah.
thanks.
And I would say, EMBM, EWPMT is another example of this blending of enterprise and tactical, right? And I think you're seeing that certainly in the network. And so the JADC2 opportunity that Ed talked about is really, on the network side especially, right? This blend. We're not going to talk about a tactical network and an enterprise network anymore. We're going to talk about one Army network. Same for EW. We're going to talk about EW as a holistic capability, as integrated with JADC2. So I think I got it right.
Gentlemen, thanks very much for your comments and insights. Brian Cook from NKSG Technologies. With that hiding plain sight and the EMS Centric Approaches, how soon do you think you'll be putting it into the battle labs, like the patrol battle lab or the newer battle lab patrols?
Yeah, I'll go first, and then I'll give it to General Ray. So right now we're doing 4G technologies, right? So we're already experimenting. I think we're challenging industry on how does hide in plain sight apply more broadly, right? So if the EMS environment Indo-PACOM looks very different than it does in EUCOM, how can I build a flexible solution or a modular solution to hide in plain sight in the different AORs around the world? Because that's not, buy a program and a bunch of serial numbers, right? It's okay, how do I get after a portfolio of capability, and what should that portfolio look like? And then how do you drive that sort of at scale? That's kind of, sort of what we're looking at. Joe Ray, I don't know if you want to add.
Yeah, so from a S2S standpoint, good example. That's a new start in 25. We already have RFIs out on the street looking at existing capabilities. We fully anticipate that'll be a COTS type solution. MEMS as an example, 26 new start. We're seeing what's out there, RFIs as well, and just waiting to see how that competes in the POM. So
I think we're good.
Thanks. Sam Stowe, Defense One. So slightly different topic. When it comes to our own systems being jammed, there's a lot of evidence from Ukraine that the precision weapons we gave were jammed by the Russians, not always hitting the target correctly. How concerning is that to you from an EW perspective, and what are we doing or can be done to harden precision weapons to make them more resistant to EW? Thank you.
I can offer you some feedback, maybe not answer the question directly, but as an institution, we need to work on the submission of 1494s and work on how, if we're going to incorporate jammers, if I go out into my backyard and want to try and jam my own systems just to continue to sharpen my my team, that's a work in progress. It takes a long lead time. There's a ton of coordination that goes into that. Stepping that up, doing that for GPS is way harder. I will just tell you, in one of the early Hunter EMS iterations, we just had to shut it down. Just shut it down because we had the local Carthage hospital, we had the Watertown airport, and frankly, we have Canada right there, and you can't bleed over into any of those, and you just got to be very careful. So it's a kind of a precision-based approach, but we do need to find, if each unit is going to go out and practice in their backyard, that is something that we have to work toward.
So there's definitely some opportunities in this space when it comes to how you can achieve precision when it comes to that. The other aspect of things right now is when you're looking at M-code as a possibility, right? So the Space Force just came online in late February. That constellation is now active. We have done some of our GPS-denied environments testing for our maps and our DAPS systems. Highly successful in that area. Those are the first M-code capable systems. And so what one of the things I know that we're looking at from an Army standpoint is with that coming online, so what's our investment strategy going forward to get at the kind of legacy kit that has either SASM or other GPS sources that are not M-code compliant. And so that's one of the things I know we have as a due out from a service standpoint we're going to be working.
I think it gets back to one of the points I made earlier is that we have to understand, and the training is going to have to take place so we understand the spectrum. It's been 20 years since we've really operated in it. And I think we're a little bit behind, and I think it's going to take a lot of training so we can understand what we look like in it and how do we protect ourselves within the spectrum itself. Thank you.
John, from the perspective, we've heard about this about a year ago in C5SR. There was a requirement on Vulcan. We responded, but we never heard anything back. So, like, when we're asking for this, I know Joe's not here, but Mr. Walsh is not here to defend that. But, like, hey, to get that feedback, to say, hey, there was some innovation, there was feedback, hey, we had some interest, but there was never any kind of follow through. So I guess the ask is, is this how everything the benefit of both, hearing back and having engagement at RX-23, but then in other elements, we don't hear back. If we want to bring innovation into here, other unique partnerships, how do we get that feedback? How do we know if we're hitting the mark or not? It would be beneficial. We know it's a feedback across the board, but the C5 community is that place to do that. But if we don't get feedback, how do we do to take the next step? Or how do we know where we're going? I know you guys are trying to improve that, but you've just been asked of how can we improve that? So.
Yeah, no, Jason, thanks. And I apologize, I don't know the Vulcan specific, right? Hope you're doing well. But I will say this, right? At C3T and Network CFT, we run a twice-year TEM with over 1,500 attendees. This year, General Ray and I are doing a whole day of one-on-ones in the first day. I am personally fencing off one day every month to engage directly with industry, right? And so I believe it is a PEO's personal responsibility to engage and give feedback and answer those types of questions. And so I take personal responsibility in that, Jason. So however we can improve, I'm happy to hear that. And please don't be shy about directly reaching out, okay?
Well, I think the TEMs have been very successful. I mean, we're the direct result of engagement. But, the thing is, it's that you guys are doing a good job. It's just getting it some other places more feedback and more because I feel like it has been very good. Those TEMs have been exceptional at that dialogue. So I want to give credit there and say that has been very beneficial for industry.
And I think one of the things IEWNS does really well is the alt industry engagements, right? And so it helps industry determine what is real, what is changing, what are the solicitations that are coming. And so I know C3T is going to evolve to that. I don't know, John Walker, if you want to talk about that real quick.
Yeah, it's the same. We do the same thing. We dedicate. Where's the XO? He knows every a Tuesday a month, right? And it's kind of like a mini version of this. I joke and call it vendor speed dating. And just back to back, half-hour blocks all day, and take a little 30 minutes for lunch. But that's the means to, in my mind, that's the way to get you the feedback. And we have a close relationship with Joe when it comes to those types of things. So we try to stay in tune with what he's looking at, see where that maps to where we may be going, and understanding any possible transition. So we try to stay in sync on that when it comes to that.
But if we're blaming anybody around here, blaming Joe is perfectly fine.
Dave, you don't have a
All right.
question.
Yeah.
You don't have a question, Dave? Oh, he does have a question. Please, pass the mic to the most important person in the room. The mic's coming over to you.
So Dave Lockhart, I don't know if you've talked about this one. I think it's come out, at least in the press, the idea of the sensors, the deep sensing CFT. And so the question I would have is, as I see the network CFT and the SIGINT EW side getting closer, Task Force ISR, how does that new CFT, the sensing CFT, relate to the larger IWNS portfolio, and then the network CFT and the just how this whole network comes together?
So I'll speak to our part, but you're actually kind of Mike Monteleone might be a little upset because that is literally the topic tomorrow for our session when it comes to how we're going to tie in with that. So, but the reality is, from our relationship with the CFT and with the APNT CFT, as well as the ISR task force, has never been stronger. The reality is, this is just in our minds, just an escalation of that, codifying the relationship a little bit more. I think there's going to be a lot more opportunities, for the levels of interaction. I was on one of the original plank holders for the network CFTs. We kind of stood that up, and so we're going to be proud to be a part of that and helping Mike as the material provider, as a portion of that. We're assuming so. But as to the network, I would have to.
And because the network underpins most of that, obviously we're going to be working very, very closely together to ensure the requirements that are set there meets the needs to what the outcome needs to be from the network itself. So that'll be a great relationship along with the PEO C3T. I think that was the last question they told us to take. We got the hook back there, but I just wanted to tell everybody thanks so much. We'll be up here if you want to talk to us offline, but appreciate everybody coming by and just spending some time with us. Thank you so much.